Welcome back to another edition of the Night Report podcast. I'm your host, Mike Broadbent. Joining me once again is my co-host, Alec Krauthamel, and special guest, Rutgers Hall of Famer and Barstool personality, TJ Hitchings. TJ, thanks for coming on, man.
Of course. What's up, guys?
The bye week blues right now, heading in on a 2-game losing streak never feels great. But hey, we'll kind of talk it up. We'll see if we think this season can be salvaged. But let's talk about you first off. How's the Midwest life going? You're in Chicago now, right?
Yeah, it's great. I've been here since just before football season started in 2023. So this is my second full year here. And it's great. A lot of people talk up the Chicago summer as like an idealistic time to be here, but I really think like September and early October is even better, especially if you're a football fan. Like something that I never really had in like the Northeast, or even if you're in New York City during college football season, there's not a huge scene of like going to a bar and watching all of the games at the same time. Here, it's like there's 100 different choices for like bars that you can go watch college football on, which is just like the most electric way to watch. I think is like go to a bar with a bunch of fans. People are in their college colors all around town. I love Chicago during the fall, and it's the weather's been great so far this year. So
yeah, they like idealize the Chicago summer, and then they just take a picture of people laying on concrete next to like the lake, and it's just like, okay, you could do this in so many places, but do you? Is it just like a melting pot of Big Ten graduates there? Because I imagine like Chicago is like the hub of basically the entire Midwest.
Yeah, it's obviously we're near Indiana, Illinois, Northwestern, but you go out on a Saturday, and if you want to go to a Wisconsin bar, you can go to a Wisconsin bar. If you want to go to an Iowa bar, you can go to an Iowa bar. Pretty much every school in the Central Time Zone will have like a bar full of very dedicated, very passionate fans. I think we're still working on the Rutgers footprint on that front. They technically say that there is a Rutgers bar. I don't know what the Saturday scene looks like at that place though. But it's pretty awesome to like get to watch games with people that are passionate just out in the wild.
And you talked about it a lot, but I guess for those who don't know, you want to go through kind of your background. You start running the Barstool Rutgers social media, and then you kind of rise up. Now you're one of the top producers for Barstool in Chicago.
Yeah, in 2017, I took over the Barstool Rutgers accounts, which for those that don't know are sort of like subsets of the main Barstool account that cover what's going on at the on campus through a Barstool lens. And through that, I got to be an intern at the Barstool Chicago office, or New York office rather, in 2019. Came on full time in 2020, and then in 2023 we moved like 50 of us from the New York office to a new Chicago hub, where I'm now a senior producer working in our Chicago office on a couple of our live programs, a morning show called Mostly Sports, and then a daily variety show called The Yak that sort of covers everything else, and then working on some other projects here and there as they spout up in the Chicago office, which has become kind of like a fantasy factory of sorts. It's chaos, but it's a good chaos.
Yeah, you guys have kind of created these little like bubbles of content, whether it be the Chicago office or the Jersey Shore house that they had this past summer. It's been cool to see how you guys have evolved, kind of the blurred lines between TV and reality shows and content. Like it's just a very unique mix, and I appreciate the ingenuity that you guys have kind of shown. But let's talk about some Rutgers football, right? We came into this season kind of, I think, relatively speaking, like the season's kind of played out how we all thought it would, where the offense is kind of better than we've seen in a long time. The defense we expected to struggle. I just think it's kind of like how it's played out that's a little disheartening. How do you personally feel like the first 5 games have played out for Rutgers football?
Okay, so my expectations are so dampened because of how high they were going into basketball season last year. I think that was like the first time that I had ever like really expected like real success, and maybe that was on me. That was my fault. Like I looked at that roster in basketball last year, and I was like, "This is it. Like if we're ever gonna do it, this is the team that's gonna do it." and maybe that was on me for like putting all my eggs in the basket before like we even had a chicken, but like that like crushed me so much that like going into football season this year, I was just like, you know what? Let's just like dampen my expectations. If it happens, it happens. And then we go 3-0, and we didn't play anybody. But like I thought like the Iowa game, I was like, okay, every year we go into a football season. If we start 3-0, we've done it the last few seasons in a row, and then we hit a game where it's like, okay, if we win this game, then we got something. And then the Iowa game comes and they lose it, and the stadium atmosphere looked unbelievable. I was like, oh my God, like everybody in college football was watching that game that night, and people were like, wow, Rutgers is like a team away from like really having something here. They have the presentation, they have the fan base, they're like ready to pop. Then they lose the Iowa game. I'm like, okay, well, like whatever, get back on the saddle next week. And then Minnesota last week, like spiking or snapping a ball through Athan's legs to lose a game. They just like keep finding new ways to lose. Or like I don't know why I'm surprised at this point, but like this season's very frustrating. Obviously, like the offensive play is so different. Like it's so like not what we're accustomed to. Where it's like we have kind of an electric offense. Like Athan's the best quarterback for Rutgers in at least a decade. I don't know. Like I'm sure there's stats to back that up or expand that, but like it's certainly since I went to school there, he's the most electric like offensive quarterback. And then like the wide receiver front is like so fun to watch. And then it's just like all of a sudden we're historically we've been a defensive team for years and years and years. There's just nothing this year. And that's like disheartening to me because like I want to believe in this team and I do think they can win games. But like if they're letting up 38 points to Iowa, what does that mean against Oregon? Like
oh man,
I'm like terrified for the Oregon game because like they can, you know, we could put up 35 on offense against not against that, but we could put up 35 points on offense. Period. But like Oregon might score 100. I'm terrified for that game. So I don't know. It's like this is like the weirdest Rutgers football season I think I've watched because like my expectations are in general in one place for Rutgers to be like competent on offense, but like really bring the heat on defense. And this year is just like completely flipped that on its head where it's like, oh, we're going to like score points, but like we're also going to let up a ton of points. So I don't really know how to like go into the rest of the season with those expectations. But I would say like so far like you said, when we opened, this season has kind of been what we thought it would be. It's just like kind of confusing to watch as a fan because it's not really what my expectations have ever been going into the season.
And I mean, I'm sure our listeners have heard us and Richie go on and on and on for weeks now about, you know, the different parts of how the season has only the last 2 weeks gone wrong. I guess for you, to kind of bring in a new point of view, what do you think would be one thing? What's one thing you think would be the biggest key to kind of turning things around?
I think it's figuring out what the issues are on defense and then tightening that up. I think that like I'll also say like the special teams of it all like have been kind of all over the place too, where Jay goes from breaking a franchise record for consecutive kicks made to missing 3 in a row. That seems like something that you have to sort of dial in on. And I'll take the L on what I tweeted at the end of the Minnesota game, where that was probably the right kicker. I know that I tweeted something about like, why are we letting a kid go out for his first career attempt? I understand now that we have a distance kicker, but also like if we have a distance kicker, how is he not the full-time kicker? Whatever. That's maybe me not understanding the politics of the special teams room, but figuring out on defense, I feel like is like the only thing that I'm not really understanding here is like, we have a defensive coordinator that's been with the program 3 times now, and this is the worst defense that we've had. Well, not the worst defense compared to the offense we've had in a while. Like obviously the Chris Ash era defenses were impossible to watch, but I don't know. That's like the most confusing part of the product right now is like we've come to expect something out of a Shiano era defense, and this is just not that. This is just not up to standard. It's not up to standard with the offenses that they've yet to play. So.
Yeah, it's how I kind of imagine like Wisconsin fans felt when they switched to the air raid, where like they weren't having success towards the end of the Paul Chryst era. They hire Fickle, who came in with a new philosophy, and they still weren't having success. So it's like it's different. It looks different, but we're still not where we want to be. So it sucks that like Rutgers seems to have like 3 cups with like a set amount of water, and you could pour some into one cup, but it's still the same amount. So all the water's poured into that offensive cup right now. And
Yeah.
you think that Shiano, given his pedigree, would be able to kind of tilt the scales and fix things. Like last year, he talked about, going into that bye and heading into the Minnesota game in November, where they kind of like stripped the defense down to the studs, and then things kind of, I don't know if they simplified things, changed some personnel, but they actually could like stand up a little bit on their own. Like it was like a house that wouldn't fall over at the slightest gust. This year, I don't even think like the defense has gotten us a couple stops. Like it's been enough where the offense should be able to kind of win the games. I think it's been the disastrous play of the special teams that have really kind of done us in, because you can't, like, we're not good enough as a program right now that we can get into the red zone and not come up with points. Like we got to put
Right.
points on the board, and it screwed us in 2 straight games. Like ultimately the offense had a chance to win both the Minnesota game and the Iowa game late in the fourth quarter, and they blew it. And that's not like the losses aren't on the offense, but there is some blame pie to go around everywhere. But I think it's mainly special teams, given especially how the first few games went. We were blocking punts left and right. We scored 3 touchdowns in the first 3 games off block kicks or block punts, and then it doesn't seem like we're kind of going after them in the same way against Big Ten opponents. I don't know. It's just very frustrating to watch, because like you have this like level of expectation from a Greg Schiano team where there's going to be a certain level of discipline, certain amount of, he talks so much about chop and personal responsibility. And I don't really see that on this team, which is kind of like, is there a lot of strife going on behind the scenes? Is there a lot of players who, because we're so transfer heavy, especially on the starters on defense, is that kind of culture not permeating through the whole roster like it normally would? I think there's just so many unknowns, and with so little access that's given to the team, it's tough to really kind of point to one thing or another. I think it's just a lot of tiny things that have added up to a big problem.
Yeah, I think that's also like an interesting point to make, is like when you said access to the team, it is such like a weird second era Shiano issue where like he's such a builder of men, like or so it seems, and like when you're dealing with high roster turnover, is he given the opportunity to sort of have that same impact? I also feel like, and maybe you guys can lend some thought to this, it's like I feel like there's no access to like this guy's just injured and out for the season, and it's like you find that out the day of or like 5 minutes before the game starts. There's no like injury updates or injury reports, and maybe that's like strategic or whatever, but I don't know. It's like a very confusing part of the fan experience where it's just like, oh yeah, this guy's just out for the year, and it's like you find that out right before the game starts or something. But yeah, it's interesting. I don't know how that lends to the anti Shiano crowd. I don't know if that feeds into it. Personally, I feel like he's like been proven as the guy that's been most successful in that in the head coaching role. And I know that people are starting to maybe swell against that. I don't know who they expect to come in replacement and do a better job. I don't know. I don't know where I stand completely on that right now. I still think he's been the most successful, and I don't know how you get more successful. I don't know what
It's definitely a big strategic thing. Like it's kind of the same thing for us, where it's like on our end, covering the team, it's like you can kind of tell when some things are probably going to be like season-ending injuries. But even then, it's like even just the minor, even just the minor things. It's you could be out for 6 weeks, could be coming back into the game the very next snap. But just don't know. And I mean, I feel like with some of those, teams are going to find out anyways. So it's like you try to do as much as you can. But yeah, it's a little bit tough to navigate at times. So yeah, it's tough, and I feel like the mindset of nobody else can win at Rutgers. I feel like in the modern era of college sports in general, I feel like there definitely is someone out there, especially, I feel like the whole New Jersey thing, while it's great now, great for Shiano and great when it was needed, when he came back and when he came in the first time, I feel like it doesn't really mean as much in terms of the roster turnover and just the new age of college sports. Like, I feel like the regional ties don't matter as much. I mean, it still means something in recruiting, but just in general, I feel like when Shiano, first of all, Shiano's not going to get fired. I don't think he's going to leave on his own terms. It seems pretty clear to that, at least from what he said and what we know. So I feel like when the time does come, it's going to be easier to find, I feel like, someone that can take over and whether the program is in upward trajectory or not when he does eventually hang him up. I feel like it's going to be a lot easier to find someone to do that.
Yeah, I feel like I was a big fan of like a Fran Brown when he was in our midst. I know he's very divisive, but obviously he's proven that he can take a program like Syracuse and like at least start to put them on the track. I don't know where that'll end up, but
Yeah, he's done a great job of effectively pointing their NIL funds in the right direction. Getting a guy like Kyle McCord to come in, and he leads the FBS in passing. This year, he gets Steve Angeli from Notre Dame, who was lighting the world on fire before he got injured, and unfortunately, he's going to be out for the rest of the season. But Fran is definitely much more of like a new age, like CEO type, where he's gonna like maximize the amount of like offensive firepower, and maybe you don't have as much elsewhere. Playing in the ACC helps with that a lot too, because the ACC, I'm not gonna shit on a specific conference, but the collective talent level in the ACC versus the Big Ten, like I think Iowa, for example, could like potentially win the ACC this year, just because they're that built up on both lines, and you don't really need to have like these explosive playmakers. Maybe you'll struggle with Miami because they're built similarly, but yeah, I think I don't think Greg's going anywhere. I do think that each of the last few seasons he's kind of learned like hard lessons in terms of like 23. It was you need to have an effective passing game. They bring in Ethan, elevates the passing game. Last year it was you need to have useful depth. We went out and like got 18 or 19 guys in the portal who've all had a starting experience. This year I think it's you got to have you could have guys on the team, you could have depth, but you need to have a scheme that makes sense. And I feel like defensively they don't really have that right now. So we'll see how things go in terms of turnover and how the plays get called after this bye. But after the bye, things get really tough really quickly. So Rutgers has 2 byes this year. They have a 5-game stretch coming after the bye. They play at Washington. They play Oregon at home for homecoming. They play at Purdue. They play at Illinois, and they play home against Maryland. So I see maybe 2 wins in that stretch. Like Washington is an absolute wagon. They're the exact type of team that's given us problems all year. Damon Williams might be the fastest quarterback in the Big Ten. Jonah Coleman might be the best running back in the Big Ten. DJ, how do you see the rest of the season going, and kind of what is your kind of pulse on if you think they're going to make a bowl game, and what's considered like a salvaged season at this point?
I mean that stretch is like the Oregon Washington back to back is such a dangerous, like I think that'll show a lot, because like I'm not gonna go out and like project a win for either of those games. I think that our potential to give up big plays on defense this year is going to create like too much opportunity for those teams like those that have like firing offenses. Like I think, but I think those games will also prove a lot of what this team is made of. Where like if they're demoralized and they come out after Washington and they get shellacked by Oregon, like that's going to be like 2 demoralizing back-to-back performances in a row. That has like the potential for a lot of guys to just like give up on the season. And like I think that that's like where you're going to find out what this team is made of, is in the back half. Like if those games go the way they are supposed to go on paper, is the entire team going to quit on each other? And then in the back half, like what type of team do we have at that point? Or do they like put their nose down and say like, listen, we could still there are still games that we can win on this schedule. Like let's go out and like try. I think when you say salvage, at this point, I feel like salvage is making a bowl, and like that's if in the grand scheme of of Rutgers and of this era of Shiano, is that a win? I don't know. I feel like we should be like looking up, because Shiano said Rutgers will be number 1, but I feel like 6 wins is your salvage at this point. I don't know if there are 6 wins left on the schedule. But
yeah, and after
that's
that,
what I would say is salvageable.
And after that 5-game stretch, just an easy couple games to close out the season at Ohio State and home versus Penn State. So it's absolutely brutal. So you kind of have to win 5 in this next 5 games, or 3 in this next 5-game stretch. Let me throw this hypothetical at you. Let's say either Rutgers goes 6-6, they beat, let's just say Purdue, Maryland, and Illinois, but they get blown out in the other 4 games. Would you rather have that season, or would you rather go 4-8 or 5-7 and you beat Penn State on senior day? Because Penn State, they got a tough little skid coming up here.
Yeah.
Now, I think there's a hypothetical where they got 4 losses in the regular season because they got Iowa on the road at Kinnick. They just scared the shit out of Indiana. Arguably, maybe you should have beaten Indiana. They play at Ohio State, and then they play Indiana at home. Those are 3 games in a row. So very well could lose all 3. It's in the realm of possibility. So if they're rolling into Piscataway 7-4, they have no shot at the CFP. The season's effectively over for them. But I want to throw out all the possibilities so you can.
Are they even going to have a team to field after their fan base burns down the stadium? If that happens?
I listen. Connor Griffin is one of my best friends at Barstool. I would love nothing more than to have an opportunity to end his season early. I would take losing out if it meant we beat Penn State. And I know that's bad bulletin board material because it's going to make us seem soft. But this mythos of a Rutgers Penn State rivalry, which is the most one-sided rivalry ever, maybe, because they don't care about us at all. Like it could be a rivalry if we would just win a couple times ever. That's like there's product there for a Pennsylvania, New Jersey cross state rivalry. I know that they want us to be rivals with Maryland. Nobody cares about that rivalry.
No,
in football.
I think
if there was fuel for a
Rutgers
state rivalry, what?
I was saying both Maryland and Rutgers are both kind of have the same thing where we're apathetic towards one another, but both hate Penn State. Like both think Penn State could be the rival. But sorry,
and Penn State is they're unrivaled. They're Penn State. We're unrivaled because Michigan or Ohio State doesn't care enough to have a rivalry with them. So if we could beat Penn State a couple times ever, I would love nothing more than that. Feed that fuel that fire. Start a rivalry there.
And I think a lot of fans would agree with you. Like I would personally rather have a moment that we could look back to in 5 years and be like, oh, that was fucking electric. We went, senior day, it was cold as hell, it was snowing, and we beat Penn State and we knocked them out. Like we finished off their season. They didn't get to the CFP, James Franklin left for Florida after that game, blah, blah, blah. Like all the scenarios that could play out. But like, we need a moment. We need some big win. And I think that would carry a lot more weight. Like, last season, do you think anybody the average college sports fan could point to, Vanderbilt's record at the end of the year? But everybody remembers that win over number 1 Alabama, and it's projected them into this season. So I think the moment's more important than, the AutoZone Parts Plus game in Detroit on December 26th against a MAC team. Like nobody gives a shit about that. Everybody cares about that moment, the field rush. Everyone's going to remember this UVA game from Friday night for the rest of their time as a UVA fan. Rutgers needs that moment.
Yeah, and I think a big reason for that is, like you mentioned, the way that the last 2 years have gone, because they're just starving for that one big moment. Because we have seen the team make bowl games, but for the most part, win the games you're supposed to win the game or lose the games you're not supposed to win. So I think just that subverting of the expectations, or what we've seen the last couple of years, I think just adds the increased hunger for that big time moment. And I think there is a difference between 4-8 and 5-7. I will say, just to go back to your hypothetical, because 4-8 means you have lost to one of Purdue or Maryland, including and also you lose to everybody else. So I would say 5-7 if I were a Rutgers fan, 5-7 and a win over Penn State is what I would prefer over 6-6 and a loss to the teams you're supposed to.
Just give me a win over a ranked team, so I can stop seeing that fucking graphic that's like longest droughts for FBS teams against ranked teams, and it's us like way at the top over everybody else. Like, I know we're not going to get on the longest droughts of being AP ranked, but like, get us off the longest droughts against ranked teams. The Illinois loss last year almost made me pull my hair out. I saw Brett Bielema this year, and I said something to his people. I was like, you guys fucking ruined my life last year. They're like, yeah, pretty good by us, right? And I was like, yeah, okay, guys, get out of my face. So give me a ranked win. I'll take that.
You're not. I will say you're definitely not the person that Brett Bielema pissed off the most, at least in the last few months, based on how much he ruined Shane Beamer in that bowl game.
Yeah. So that's Illinois.
Um, all right. So speaking of subverting expectations, if there was an opposite of that, that was what happened for Rutgers basketball last season, as you kind of alluded to, TJ. Rutgers basketball, while they had two top five picks, we missed the tournament. I think everyone was kind of expecting that magical run. We've seen Duke have these diaper dandy led teams. We've seen Kentucky do it. I think everybody kind of thought we were going to have this, dynamic duo lead us into at least the Sweet 16. Because if you make it last year to the Sweet 16, or if you make it to the Sweet 16, yeah, it was going to be in Newark. It would have been an absolute amazing environment. Just talk about how deflating that was for you as a fan and how it kind of bled into your lack of interest in Rutgers football. Do you feel like that's a common thing where, like, because so many new fans came on for the basketball season and, they can kind of continue the fanhood by watching them in the NBA, but it's just kind of like taking some air and taking some, gas away from the athletic department in general?
Yeah, I think it's been like a tough stretch, obviously, because there was so much hype built into last year's team to the point where, like, for a year plus before that, we were thinking about that team because we knew, Dylan and Ace were going to be playing together. And I think like people set their expectations as lofty as a Final Four. I may have said that on a show or two, and that's my own fault for having rose colored glasses, but it was very, very, very frustrating to watch because it felt like a team that, like, I had seen in the past. It didn't feel like that. In moments, Dylan and Ace would take over, and you're like, wow, that's why they're an NBA level player. But, like, having moments like going to Madison Square Garden to watch them play Michigan State and, like, being in a sea of Scarlet and, like, hearing a crowd like that kind of get the air sucked out of them because we're, not winning. It's super, super frustrating, and I can see why it would take people out of the Rutgers ethos and Rutgers, fan base, because, like, if you invest your money or time or whatever into that, and then it doesn't pay out the way you want it to, like, why come back this year when it's on paper a much, 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 much worse roster, which in Rutgers history will probably mean they're going to be a better team somehow. But I don't know. It kind of took me out of it where it's like, it's like in my world, that's a lot of people in my office asking me for explanations, and I don't know how I'm supposed to explain why they didn't play better, other than to say, like, we put all of our NIL into two guys or 2.5 guys, and the rest of the team wasn't up to snuff. But, like, that's like a lot of people pointing fingers at me and being like, why did you not play? But I didn't play. But I don't know. It's just like I should have never had my expectations as high as they were, because that's just, the Rutgers way. Like, we made history, first team ever to have two top 5 draft picks and miss the tournament. That's a first. We're making history no matter what, what direction it comes. Yeah, banner, 2 top 5 draft. But, like, I don't know. When I first was at Rutgers as a student, my first year there was 2017. And obviously very rough teams at that time. So to see them, like, peak all the way up in terms of hype, to go all the way up in hype, but still have a similar, outcome. It's very interesting. I feel like it's a very unique perspective in the terms of, like, college basketball fandom. Like, how many fan bases go from expecting nothing and getting it to expecting everything and getting nothing in a 10-year stretch. I don't know. I don't know where to place my expectations for this college basketball season. I'm going to go out on a limb and say I'm going to have no expectations, and whatever I get, I get. And maybe that's, being a Scrooge, but I feel like that's just being realistic.
I think that's, like, the only safe position to take with the hoops program right now, unfortunately. Like, I don't think I've seen a single publication project them to finish better than, like, second to last in the conference. I guess one cool caveat is every team makes the Big Ten tournament now, so that can't be, like, thing to aim for. So maybe just not finishing last, like, getting some moments at home. I don't know. I feel like this is given we have a new administration, I think this is kind of like a big make or break year for Peichel. If things kind of fall apart, I think he might get forced into some decisions that he normally wouldn't otherwise have to make. Um, so we'll see.
And that sucks because I love Peichel. I've talked to Peichel a few times, and he's met my parents. Like he's a great guy, and he's been great to me at every opportunity that I've talked to him or been around him. But like, yeah, I feel like you have to have a conversation at some point about like what's going on, because like it was the most live and die by the freshman team of all time last year, and like they can't score 90 points a game. Like that's not a realistic ask. It was really awesome to watch them play. Like every time Dylan Harper had the ball in his hands, I was like, oh my God, that's an NBA player playing on my favorite college basketball team. And it will be cool to be like, where those NBA players, where Dylan Harper, 5-time NBA All-Star, went to college, right? The same place I went. But that's like a weird consolation prize for them being the embarrassment of college basketball last year, which I feel like is fair to say. Like that's
Yeah.
Now, I don't know how much you followed the offseason and the team this upcoming year, but you were in front of a lot of those teams, early on in Pikel's tenure when they rose up the Big Ten and kind of played the underdog. Do you see any similarities from those teams and your experience watching them to what we could see on the floor this year?
Yeah, I think like the teams that were on the court when I was at Rutgers were so like scrappy underdog, under recruited guys, like the Geo Baker led teams. And even like until we got, the Ron Harper, Caleb McConnell, Montez Mathis class that came in, like it was like teams that you didn't really expect to be like super flashy. You expect them to play like speed limit basketball and keep the score under 65 and try and win a game that way. And when that worked, it was like extremely, that's where like the rack atmosphere was sort of like born from, was like, let's get the crowd involved. Let's like play scrappy basketball. And I feel like the one thing that I would say about this roster on paper is because it's a under recruited, under hyped, there's no expectations behind this team. So like that's where you sort of say like, we're not looking at, that one guy or those two guys to be like, you guys, you have to take the ball up every time and sort of like make a miracle out of it. Like play team basketball and figure out how they want to win a game and then see if that works. Cause like there's going to be, a game where, each guy has an opportunity to sort of like take the ball, take the game over and have a game. And that's going to have to be how they win games this year, I think, because they don't have an Ace Bailey or a Dylan Harper to rely on to make a show-stopping, like unbelievable shot that you've never seen go in before. That's just not on the roster on paper this year. Maybe somebody steps up, but like that's sort of my read on it is let's see what happens and try to go back to playing, a Rutgers brand of basketball, because they had the talent last year, but it's not the brand of basketball they were attempting to play.
Yeah, I think Peichel like strives with those under recruited guys, and that's kind of the teams he wants is the just the 14 dudes without big names on the back. Kind of he can develop slowly. They got a lot of young guys. I hope it's just a developmental year where you can kind of look into next year where we have the rev sharing, we have enough NIL to keep like a starting five, because you really kind of do need to develop in Peichel's system for him to succeed the way he wants to. So that's what I'll be looking forward to. Mentioned Ace and Dylan a lot. What's kind of your expectations for how they'll assimilate to NBA basketball?
I think my read whenever I was talking to people about Rutgers last year was like, I feel like Ace has the higher ceiling. I feel like Dylan has the much higher floor. Like I feel like Dylan Harper, like when you watch him play, you watch him like cut through into the paint and lay it in very, very, very naturally and easily. Like he looked NBA level last year, I thought. Ace was like he would cut out to the corner and like do a 360 spin and shoot it off his off foot and throw it like 30 feet in the air. Be like, oh my God, that's the craziest shot I've ever seen. And then would go in. Like he would like choose to take these ridiculously impossible shots to make. And he would miss sometimes, but like more often than not, he would do something like athletically that I was like, whoa, what? Like what? How, like that's crazy the way he moves on a basketball court. I feel like he has like some like physical maturing, like he needs to like put on some muscle or something to like play the game of the brand he's trying to play against like the more like the grown men that are playing in the NBA. But I feel like Dylan is going to like jump in immediately and succeed. And I feel like Ace, I'm glad that he's like free from whatever happened with his agent situation. But I feel like Dylan is going to be like more immediately successful and Ace is going to have to like work up towards that level. But Can I also ask what happened with why did Ace Bailey's height shrink like 2.5 inches between Rutgers and the NBA draft? Did we ever get an explanation for? Somebody said it was his shoes, but
Yeah, the
Um,
combine measurements are without shoes, so that's naturally going to change some things. And I feel like the height measurements, like within programs, I feel like every program kind of overestimates their guys' heights at least a little bit. Now,
yeah,
I don't know why the combine measures guys without shoes because they don't play in the NBA barefoot. I
yeah,
felt like it caused a little bit more of a stir than it really should have, but I don't
right.
know. That's just me.
That the whole draft cycle shenanigans was just the cherry on top for that whole time of time of life. But hopefully they're in good spots now.
yeah, as a Sixers fan, I was selfishly hoping Ace would end up in Philly. Wasn't the case. We're happy with VJ Edgecombe though, and
Yeah,
I think Dylan couldn't have landed in a better spot given the young guys they have around. Like being Wemby's potential, like Robin for the rest of his career is just so appetizing that in an organization that's really just kind of like pissed excellence there. For the last 20 years, Pop while he's still not the coach anymore, he's in like an advisory role. You have a guy in De'Aaron Fox you can learn from and eventually take over. They have Stephen Castle, as well. Like they got a lot of young talent there, and I feel so happy for Dylan because like that was the team I was hoping one of these guys would end up on because there was just so much around them. And Ace, I think, landed in a good spot because there's gonna be a lot of shots to be had outside of Lauri Markkinen. There's not really a whole lot there, so he's gonna be able to take on as much as he can handle in year one. And he seemed, after like a little bit of trepidation about going to, Utah, and I don't know this firsthand, but he didn't look super happy on draft night to go there. But in the latest interview, it just seems like in all my dealings with Ace, he's like the most happy-go-lucky, like good dude, and he doesn't have like a malicious bone in his body. So I figured he'd like get over it quickly, and it seems like he has. It seems like he's talking about going hiking, and he's like never gone fly fishing before, but I did that, and that was cool, and just I'm happy for him. I'm happy for both guys. I'm happy that they'll be able to. They're both very good representatives of the university, and I think if they do end up getting max deals, they could end up being like our version of Trey Young, or our version of like Steph Curry, where they're like taking care of the program. So,
for
um,
sure.
super happy for those guys.
I mean,
Um,
I think Ace was more surprised than anything because it's been reported by many others, and I think we reported it too that his camp wanted to go to Washington, and
yeah,
Danny Ainge is kind of notorious for saying like no matter what if you have the baseline talent, you have like the pedigree, whether you want to come here or not, if you don't want to come here, we'll take you anyways.
yep, yeah, little ballsy, not something that most GMs would do, but Danny Ainge has, he's got the pelts on the wall to show he knows what he's doing. Um, TJ, you've been great with your time here. I know the Yankees game's on for both of you guys, so we'll let you go. But is there anything you wanted to touch on before we head out? Anything you want to hype?
No,
I had one more thing.
Okay,
okay.
go ahead.
Let's get together. So I don't know how involved because the deal's a little bit interesting, but for my own personal curiosity, I know Ryan Russillo is coming to Barstool in a sense. I don't know if you've talked to him. I guess what's that whole experience going to be like for you? Because I know he's very close to the Pardon My Take guys too. I guess how excited are you for Russillo coming to Barstool?
I'm excited. He's been in our office a couple times just to be on part of my take and when he's in Chicago, and I haven't had the opportunity to get him one on one yet. I do want to talk to him because we share a piece of work history. We both spent time at the Trenton Thunder. He was, I believe, a
Oh yeah,
broadcaster there, and I worked on the production team. Not at the same time, obviously, but we're both alumni of the Trenton Thunder, which is a place that I hold very near and dear to my heart. So I would love to pick his brain on his time there at some point. But yeah, it's awesome. He's obviously a huge name, and he'll be a huge piece of the ecosystem of Barstool. And I know him and my guy Mark Titus have spent some time together in the past as well. So it'll be exciting to get him in the mix, definitely, and add him to the ever growing world.
yeah. He always seemed like a fish out of water at the Ringer, so I'm glad he's in a place that makes more sense for him from a lot of directions. Because he seems like a good guy. I listen to his show, and I'll be listening once he transitions over to Barstool as well.
I'm gonna
Um,
miss his one-liners and Bill Simmons clearly not picking up on them when they're on the same show together. I'm gonna miss that.
Uh,
oh man. All right. So, where can Rutgers fans find you on social media and anything else you wanted to touch on before we head out?
Yeah, my socials are just my name at TJ Hitchings, and if you wanted to watch my sports centric show, we're on Monday through Friday in the morning at 11 a.m. It's mostly sports. It's mostly sports on YouTube, and then the Yak at 1 p.m. Eastern on YouTube. If you're in for more of a comedy variety space thing, and just like if you're a Rutgers fan and you're in the Midwest, hit me up. Let's go watch a game or something on Saturday because we're definitely lacking in the footprint department. I see a lot of Iowa, a lot of Minnesota, a lot of Indiana, a lot of Illinois. Not a lot of Scarlet out on the streets out here in Chicago. But other than that, I appreciate you guys for having me back on or having me on.
Oh, of course. No, you've been on multiple times now, so you're officially hitting a friend of the program status. So thanks once again for coming on, TJ. But for me and Alec, this has been another edition of the Night Report podcast. Signing off.